Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Family Couch. I am so excited and honored to have on our show today my friend and colleague, Dr. Michelle Dickie. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think pretty much every human has to deal with and kind of figure out how to express in their life, and that is the topic of gratitude. And so we'll be exploring it kind of from a family parenting perspective, but I think this is one of those topics that as humans, we just have to learn how to show it, how to acknowledge it, how to express it. And so we'll dive into that today. So Michelle, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today about parenting and gratitude.
Yeah. I want to say this because I feel like you and I have known each other for a few years now. And every time that I come in contact with what you're doing and the work you're doing, I'm always amazed that that kind of is part of all of what you do, the gratitude piece, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really a focal point of everything that I do, right?
Yeah.
All programs, everything. Yes.
Yeah. So before we jump into this awesome dialogue, can you let our audience know a bit more about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, I started off as a chiropractor, and I still am a chiropractor and practice here in Ontario, Canada. And I've always loved helping people, and I've always loved family. Always thought I'm going to have this big family when I grow up. And, it was really just, I think service, really was kind of my calling and my mission. And what I learned being a chiropractor is that it really truly is the mind, body, and spirit that has to be worked on and connected in order for us to really live into a model of wellness, right? It's not just our physical body, it's everything. And I started really delving deep into, personal growth and what I could do personally. And that's kind of really where I stumbled on, the practice of gratitude. And, lots of us have seen the movie The Secret and all these different shows that really talk about attracting, right? I think as a culture, we're becoming more conscious and we're becoming more aware and spiritual. And, I started my gratitude practice, and I started to ask my children at night, what are you grateful for? And I have to say that it was one of those aha moments, because kids say the darnest things, right? But they would say the most amazing things. And I would want to run to my room and write down what they said, because they're not like us where we, and we've talked about this, where you get stuck on autopilot, just going through the motions.
Yeah.
And I think we can do that in every aspect of our life, including gratitude, where it's like we just say, oh, I'm grateful for my family and my friends and my job and it's just this regurgitated thing that has really no emotion behind it, and you're really not doing the exercise of gratitude. But with kids, they just say the most beautiful little things, like an animal they saw, or somebody gave them a piece of gum at school, or just these little things. And it reminded me to think about the small things too. And it really widened my gratitude practice. And from that is really when I decided to create the journal I created, which is Giving Thanks, a gratitude journal for kids, and really to focus on parenting and the family, and really bringing more connection as a family. Because what I find is, with all this technology, I see it over and over again, we could text 50 people a day, but we're really not connected to anyone.
Right.
And I really think it's a crisis. So, I feel like gratitude and connecting is really where my mission is now.
Yeah. And there's so many amazing nuggets that you were sharing. And one of the things that I was hitting on and kind of zoning in on is this idea of kids being able to be grateful for the smallest things. And I guess kind of from what you do in the practice that you do, why do you think that we go from that moment of being so grateful for someone giving us a piece of gum, or so grateful for our teacher letting us be the line leader that day, to not really being able to see it, those little moments in our lives? What do you think happens to us as we grow up?
Well, I think it's a couple of things, but one of the big things I think is just mindfulness, or in chiropractic, we use a term called present time consciousness, where you're actually focused on the moment at hand. And what I experience in my practice is most moms, most people in general, are just so busy these days. And whether it's self-created or not, or expectations from society, or whatever, we want to chat about, it really just comes down to they're busy. And when we're busy, we start to go on that autopilot like we've talked about. And then we're not even paying attention to the little things anymore in life, because we're so fixated on, I got to get here, I got to get there, I got to get the dinner, I got to get this, I got to get the kids to bed, I got my own work to do, I got to get up and do the same thing tomorrow, and on and on. And so we don't notice, that bird sitting outside the window. We don't notice these little things, but kids aren't worried about that stuff, right? Like, they're not concerned about getting to their thing on time, because we do that for them. We take that on. And so they can appreciate the smaller things. And so I think for us as adults and as parents, that's where the retraining comes in. That's where we have to refocus ourselves to stop and become more present in the moment. And that's really a tip and tool I share with my patients all the time. We've learned now to maybe get up and stretch from our computer, because we've had that drilled in us enough, right? Or set your timer for your water, or fill a jug of water so you drink it all day long. But what about our mental health and our check-in that way, right? It's the same thing. Even if you say to yourself, top of the hour, I'm just going to look around, I'm going to stop for a second, I'm going to be grateful for something in that present moment. Right? And it just draws back that mindfulness to the moment. And I mean, anybody can stop and look around, no matter what situation you're in, no matter, if you're in an argument or in a poor situation, you can look to say, okay, what is one thing here that I can be grateful for? And sometimes that can turn the situation around.
Right. And so one of the things that I was thinking of, because we talk a lot about family discussions on the show, and so as a caregiver, parent, or whatever caregiver, like you said, it's really hard to slow down and be present. It's really hard not to be thinking about the next task, the next thing on my to-do list, the next, person I had to take somewhere, the meal tonight, laundry, all these things that you've got to get done. How do you find time even in your mental space to say, I'm going to find something to be grateful for, to be thankful for?
I think that's a couple of things. One, I think it's just like any new habit, right? You are building a new habit, and it's the habit of gratitude. So it's just like any skill. We learn how to play basketball. It's practicing. We learn how to, write. It's practicing writing. It's just that. So that's the same with us. It's building this habit. So that's why maybe we have to set an alarm. Maybe we have to, have a simple tool to use that, we can say, okay, the top of the hour, or whatever is going to be our cue, right? Our internal kind of thing to get this habit going. Because without that, we won't create it, right? It's like, new foods. You have to have the foods prepared in your fridge, or you're not going to change how you eat. Right? So we have to, I think, one, it's developing the new habit, and two, it's maybe to look at what our obligations are, and I was listening recently to a podcast by Marie Forleo, and, she said something really clever. She said, if you're unwilling to say no to things, then you're really just saying yes to everything, and you're not going to be doing the things that really matter anymore. Right? So sometimes I think it's maybe just stopping and taking a look at, okay, what are we doing? Are there some things that maybe aren't things that we actually need to commit to? And maybe by taking out a few things, we can then transfer to new habits and new things that we do want to bring into our practice in our lives.
Yeah. And I really love that piece, because I think That's so true about bringing gratitude into your life. Is more of a practice. It's not something that's going to happen by osmosis. It's not something that's going to happen just because you want it to. You really do have to stop and say, okay, every night I'm going to do this. Every morning I'm going to do this. I know you said there are like tools, and there's all kinds of apps that you can kind of download that will alert you. Hey, what are you thankful for? But it has to be, and maybe, this might be the term that I'm looking for. It has to be active. It can't be a passive thing. You have to actively and bring that awareness to your life, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you don't have the emotion with it, then that's not the power of gratitude. That's not how it's effective. That's not where the magic is, if you will. It's the magic is all the emotion and all the feeling that comes from it.
Right.
That's what's key, right? That's why the research shows that children who do daily gratitude have better grades at school. They have better relationships with their friends. They get better jobs. They have a better immune system from a healthcare perspective.
Right.
I mean, all of these things happen when children have a practice of gratitude. And it's not because they're just writing the same old thing every day. It's because they're stopping and they're thinking for a minute and they're feeling it, right? When my kids say something fun at school, and kids are the best to look, it's like almost like they relive it, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I saw this bumblebee, and and they're telling you about it. And it's that brings the practice of gratitude to life. And that's what's really key.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've kind of mentioned a few different examples of how kids kind of bring it to life. And I know we talked a little bit about how can we then bring more gratitude. And I think all of us have learned, like you said, we kind of go through the motion. Thank you. I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful. Hashtag blessed. We do this all the time, and it kind of becomes this monotonous drone. So how can we maybe find other ways to bring gratitude into our lives, into our practice without the words, I'm thankful, I'm grateful?
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes it's this autopilot. Oh, we're all just, but again, I think it comes down to mindfulness, like being present, being attached to that moment. I think that's huge, because without that, then we're always just looking at the grandiose. So we're like, blessed life and all this, but no, it's the little things, right? I think it's, it's just giving thanks in the way that you give thanks, right? And different personalities, which is what I really delve a lot into in my programs, how different personalities express themselves differently, right? So, just because, and even the languages of love, right? Acts of service, sending a note, who doesn't like a piece of mail, right? Just to say how their day was, and, people want to feel appreciated, and they just love to hear that you're thinking about them. So it doesn't have to be a thank you. It can be picking up the phone and calling a grandparent just to say hi. Yeah. That's a way of showing gratitude that they were your grandparent, and they're alive, and you still have the time to talk to them. And, that's going to bring such happiness to their day by hearing their grandchild, right? So it doesn't have to be, you're right, thank you, and, all this sort of stuff. It can be just it can become, and this is where the practice really comes in, right? If you look at elite athletes, they were not an elite athlete overnight. They started as an amateur athlete where they were the same as all of us, right? The average Joe going to the gym, doing whatever, fumbling, bumbling, doing the whole thing, right? It's a practice over time, right? That made them an elite athlete, and it made them become second nature to their sport, right? I look at the skiers from the Olympics. I look at them go down the hill. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how are you going so fast down that hill, right?
Right.
Because they didn't day one go that fast. It's years, and they feel like skis are like their feet.
Yes.
Right? Like me, I think I'm bumbling and fumbling on my skis, right? Because I don't. And that's what gratitude can be, right? It's the day one. My kids, when I first started doing gratitude, do you think they wanted to do it every night? No, right? Because it's a habit. It's a skill. It's learning something new, right? So it's the same with us as adults. It's okay. At the beginning, it's a bit rehearsed, right? You have to put the ding on your phone, or you have to fill out a journal, or you have to, do something really programmed and scheduled, right, to get the habit going. But then as you start to become that habit and you become a person of gratitude,
right,
then how you live your life is going to be in gratitude. And that's really the true shift, right? Because now everything is from a space of gratitude.
Right.
So you don't have to be saying thanks and all of this. You just, in a subconscious, at a spiritual heart level, are just living your life in that place of gratitude. And, that's just my hope for everybody, because when we're in that space, that's when I think, there's going to be less, sometimes mental health issues like depression, anxiety, stress. I mean, anxiety is just so huge now with everybody.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff, because we're not living in gratitude. We're living in what if and all these other things. And so, it's moving. So I do agree that that's in an ideal world where, we're not just saying thank you and I have a blessed life and both, but it's over time that we're going to become that way as our own personal awareness becomes deeper into the practice.
Yeah. When you were talking, I was thinking we need maybe the 5 gratitude languages. And what does that look like? Because I think you're right. We all share it in different ways, and I think it's really important, especially in families, just like with the love languages, to figure out how each of us figures out how to say thank you without saying it. I know parents are always like, say thank you, say thank you. And yes, we began to do it just monotonously, but really knowing that, okay, if my kid decided to clean up the house, that was their way of saying thank you for whatever. If my kid decided to help their sibling out with their homework without me saying anything, that was kind of their way. If my kid decided to tell me a story about a bumblebee, that was them showing me how grateful they were that they got to experience this nature kind of experience. And I think sometimes, when we are going about our lives, we don't have time for those little stories. Okay. Oh, that's really cute. Okay. And so we begin to diminish that in that child's kind of life, if you will.
Absolutely. And that's where the parenting part is so important, right? Not only just from a modeling perspective. So your kids, I mean, it and you talk about it all the time, is that they're watching you.
Yeah.
Right. And they're seeing what you do.
Yeah.
Right. And how you are in the world and how you talk to other people and how you show gratitude and all of those sorts of things. So I think one side of the parenting aspect is modeling. And then number 2 is exactly that. It's realizing that people show things in different ways and to be open that it's not always going to be the way you do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it's wrong. And to be more accepting of, okay, you know what, this is another way of showing things, right? And then I think it's bringing it up, right? So that the child becomes aware, right? Because that's the next level. So you're right. If somebody cleans up the kitchen, and you didn't ask them, then you know what? It's maybe a case of saying, hey, you know what, Shannon, I noticed you cleaned up the kitchen today and I really appreciate it. And it really lets me know that you're grateful for the dinner I prepared today.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Because now she knows, Yeah. And that means that the person is understood, and that's what we all want, right? Is just to be understood. So I think that's a great point you made with that.
And it encourages more. So if I say, I saw you do this, I appreciate you, then the person feels like, okay, it's something for me to do. I think sometimes we get bogged down with, I'll say this, I definitely grew up in a home where it was like, this is what you're supposed to do. So you don't get, told how good or how appreciative it is because you're supposed to clean up the room, you're supposed to do this. But I think it becomes this piece of, if I show you that these are things that I appreciate, then we learn more about ourselves, we learn more about the people we love, and we're able to support them. If I know my mom appreciates when I do this, then I can support her and I can do this. If I don't know what my mom likes or if she's even happy, I don't know what to do. And so then I stop doing things and, it spirals from there.
Well, that's it. And I think that's a main part of it is it has to be fun and it has to be something that's not attached to strings. Do you know what I mean? Because that's really important. That's why when I did the journal, I did it, this is my son's, but so that, the day you fill in.
Yeah.
right? Because the thing is that it's going to take time for this to become a practice. Just think of us, right? We're not perfect when we say we're going to, oh, I'm going to start running. Well, we don't do it like we say, it's okay, now I got to get into our lifestyle, get into the right. And so I think that's really important. That's why I didn't put a date. So if you miss a day, it's fine. We just carry on the next day that we do it. It's not bad. It's not anything. We don't have to have 10 pages of blank because we miss saying things. We just carry on, right? We just carry on. And then the hope is that the time gets closer together and we're more aware and in practice, and it's fun, right? That's why you saw my kids draw in it or they put pictures in it. It doesn't always have to be writing it, it can be a mix of things so that there's some fun to it, right?
Yeah. And so I'll ask this, kind of just shifting a bit, because we've been talking about how to get it started. We've been talking about how to do it, how to make it a practice. For families who maybe are coming into this where for years they just haven't, for whatever reason, they've been too busy, things just kind of have gotten out of the way, they've had some major struggles in their family, and gratitude just isn't a part of their family. And maybe that parent who's realizing, wow, my kids are not grateful. My kids are very, needy. They're depressed. They're entitled. They feel like they're supposed to have. How do you kind of reset that so that way the family now as a whole begins to practice that level of gratitude or that practice of gratitude?
Well, I truly think that, again, it comes down to the parents, right? I think that there's ways, lots of people have used my book where they've gotten it and they use it as a family book at the beginning. So at the dinner table, they just go around and they ask what everybody's grateful for that day and write it down. And each day I ask a really specific question. So it could be, what do you love about your arms? Or, what does the word grateful mean? Or what gave you peace today? So there's a question. So then again, they just go around the table and they ask that question to everybody and write it down. So it starts to be more of a kind of a family thing. So they see everybody participating, and then it can start to become, okay, now it's their own nightly practice and it's their own, right? So I think one way is to just get the whole family involved. So it's kind of like that buy-in, right? Where everybody has to buy into the idea and, go from there. And the reason I say to share is because people often like to hear what other people answer to a lot of these questions, right? Especially your family. And so it's a positive reinforcement, right? It's like, okay, you know what? We're all doing it. We're all part of this. And we're seeing that sometimes things are big. Sometimes they're small. Sometimes they're, about a thing. Sometimes they're about a feeling, right? And so it starts to give everybody ideas, right, to what to even be grateful for. Because at the beginning, maybe we don't even really know what to be grateful for. At the beginning, ask my kids, and they're like, well, I don't know. That whole, what did you do at school today? I don't know.
Yes.
Right? So, they're going to say that at the beginning because they don't know, because we haven't trained them to be mindful of these things. But as you keep asking, right, there's going to be more. So at the beginning, when you share as a family, then, that really gives permission for people to look at all the things in their lives, I think, and that can really spur that gratitude from going. I know one person, I have different quotes at the bottom of each page, and a lot of them they're all kid related, but they're all gratitude related at the same time. And one thing that she does is she will pick a quote and write it in her kitchen. They have like a chalkboard. She writes the quote, and then the kids have to go through the book and find it. And whatever page that is, that's what they do that day.
Nice.
And I thought that's such a nice idea because it's just reinforcing an inspirational, positive quote. Then it's a bit of fun, like who can find it first, and then that's the activity that I do that day. So there's lots of ways to kind of roll it into your family.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking a little bit more to kind of just bouncing around here, this idea of gratitude being seen as maybe like too positive, and like, how do you manage when you're not feeling grateful for things and you're not feeling like life is going the way you want? For both, I think, parents and kids. I think there are times, especially nowadays, unfortunately, that kids are being burdened with so much stuff that they weren't burdened with, like what's happening in the world. And then parents have to also be burdened with that stuff too. And so how do you find gratitude when there are times that you're just not sure you're grateful anymore?
That's a great question, because that is true. Depression's on the rise, anxiety is on the rise with kids, suicide in youth is on the rise. So I absolutely do believe that, there's often days where it's very hard to find something you're grateful for, especially if you've been bullied or picked on at school. If you're a child that has, major situations going on. And that happens in my house too. I'll ask, oh, what were you grateful for today? Or we'll ask the question and they don't know, but we don't stop there.
Right.
It's okay to not know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay to take time to just reflect. And then we just walk through the day. And honestly, two things I think are very powerful with that. One, if your child is saying they don't know day after day, then that is a red flag.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what is happening in your child's life, either at school or with a friend or at home, then I would start investigating.
Yeah.
Because it's not normal for a child to go day and day and day and day and day and not have one thing to be grateful for.
Right.
And to me, that's a clue that maybe there's some sadness somewhere or something that's really major kind of steering their thought process for the time.
Right.
And number two is, I think it's a great way for parents to actually get connected to their child. Because if they don't know, we walk through the day. I say, okay, well, what happened? We got on the bus. Was there anything great on the bus? Okay, you got to school. And then all of a sudden something will happen, right? Yeah. They're going to say something like, and then at recess, oh, at recess we did this, this, and this, and this, and it was so much fun. Oh, well, isn't that something great to be grateful for today?
Yeah.
Right? And that's how they learn too. So I think it's okay to say you don't know, or to go on. And to me, then that's a whole reason to do this with your child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really love that piece too, because I think we sometimes as adults do that too, where we go through the whole day and we only see the negatives, especially again with our world. It's so easy, like, oh, the world is, and it's hard to find the beauty, the gratefulness, the positive in our lives. And I think if we do what you just said, even as adults, just go through our day. Let's start with from the time you woke up, what happened. You can find at least one thing to be like, well, that wasn't so bad. It wasn't the most horrible, it wasn't the greatest thing I've ever experienced, but it wasn't horrible that I went to Starbucks and, they actually had my favorite, flavor. Cool. That happened today. Great. Like, if that was the only thing that happened today, that happened. I got to the mailbox right in time and they were able to mail it off. All right. Everything else messed up that day, but at least I was able to do that. And I think you're right. When we do it with our kids, we kind of are able to be like, oh, I should be able to do this too. So I'm walking through the day with my child and I'm realizing, this is something I can do for myself as well when I'm feeling like everything is just going, haywire and there's nothing I can control and everything's chaotic. Because I think, again, I like this topic because I keep saying it, but I think our world is in such a disarray and disengaged that it can be really easy to get carried away and forget where there's gratitude and where there's space to be mindful. Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a great study that showed where cell phones became available to the masses. And when that happened, that exact moment is where the rise of, depression, suicide came about, anxiety with kids. And conversely, where it showed that dating actually dropped significantly. And, not that I want my kids out dating all over the place, but you know what? I do want them to be connected and I do want them to be, with a partner that can provide support and empowerment and encouragement.
Yeah.
And, we all want that, right? To be connected. And so I agree, it's just instant access and it's just instant everything. And, you do something silly at school today, it's on social media. Yeah. Nobody forgets it. When we were kids, you do something stupid in the schoolyard, nobody knows. The next day, everybody forgot. Maybe somebody remembers, but nobody really remembers because there's no picture of it.
Right.
It's kind of like, oh, Michelle did this stupid thing on the playground, remember? And they laugh, but nobody really remembers what it was. Right. But now it's like, it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's like everywhere. And you can't forget when, your pant was rolled up and
Yeah.
toilet paper was hanging out or whatever, you know?
Right.
And that's the kind of pressures. So I agree, you know, today is very challenging from a micro level of just our day-to-day interactions, and then to like a macro level in our world. And this is why, again, I'm just so passionate right now about, you know, connecting on a deeper level and gratitude, because I think those two things, if we can really connect at a deeper level as humans, and we can, you know, start with our own connections, and if we can really move towards gratitude for even the little things, then that's what's going to make that conscious shift, you know, globally, right?
Right. I agree with that. And, you know, Michelle, I know we could talk about this topic all day because there's like so many other ways we can go with gratitude and how to practice it and what to do. But I definitely want to give you a space to let our audience know more about where they can find you and how they can connect with your resources.
Awesome. Well, yes, on Amazon, people can always grab my gratitude journal. So Giving Thanks, Children's Guide to Daily Gratitude. And so that's available at Amazon. You can also go to my website, which is drmichelledickie.com. So drmichelledickie.com. And you can opt in. I actually do, I give an ebook which helps parents to help their children learn better at school based on their personality traits, because I think that's a huge part that's missing. So people can feel free to download that. You can also access my connecting program there and my book through there, and a lot of other stuff I have on gratitude. And obviously join my email, and I'd love to connect with everybody there and you know, share my resources on a weekly basis.
Nice. So don't fret if you were not able to jot any of that down. All of the links to the book and to Michelle's website will be in the show notes that accompany this episode. So please feel free to check that out and connect with Michelle if you want to learn more about how to bring gratitude into your life and into your family. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on with us today and sharing all of your expertise and your experience on this topic.
Thanks so much. It's really a pleasure. And like you said, we've known each other for a couple of years now. And I just love, you know, each time I chat with you, it's like our businesses are evolving and evolving and evolving. And it's just so fun, right? Where we're moving and the direction. And, you know, I just love your mission. And, you know, I think it's so important because that's just such a big aspect of parenting, that shame. You know, it goes hand in hand, right?
Definitely.
With feeling that self-worth, connected, all of this. So I love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll say this, I think gratitude is such a huge combatant to shame, being able to be grateful for what we have. So we're not spending all of our time focusing on judging others. We're focusing on what we have and what we can be thankful for. So I think our missions go hand in hand quite a bit.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. All right. See ya.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you later.